On Friday, February 7, 2025, Mrs. Susan Wanjiku received a phone call asking her to rush to the Kenyatta National Hospital in Nairobi, Kenya, where her husband was receiving treatment, that there was an emergency that required her attention. Hearing this, Susan abandoned everything she was doing, grabbed some hospital documents, and immediately rushed down to the hospital. However, on arrival, she was called into a separate room by a doctor, where she was told that her husband, 39-year-old Gilbert Kinyua, had been murdered inside the hospital ward where he was receiving treatment. This didn't make any sense to Susan, because it was ridiculous to even imagine that someone could be brutally murdered inside a place that was built with the sole purpose of saving people's lives. What made the news even more unbelievable was the status of the hospital in question. The Kenyatta National Hospital was not a small local hospital or a primary health center. It takes pride in being considered the oldest and also the largest hospital in Kenya. The hospital also serves as a teaching hospital for medical students from the University of Nairobi College of Health Sciences. It has also been known to receive the largest number of referred cases in the whole country. The Kenyatta National Hospital is considered the best in the country by many and also among the top 10 in ranking. So you can imagine how absurd it may have sounded to Mrs. Susan when she was informed that her husband had been murdered in such a place. Regardless of how unbelievable it may have sounded, Susan was made to face her reality when she was asked to go into the ward and identify the body. As requested, she went into the ward and then identified the body as that of her sick husband. The area had been cordoned off and access restricted, while the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, DCI, was informed about the situation. Gilbert had been married to Susan for about 11 years, and they had 2 children between them. Gilbert worked as a water technician for a company based in Nairobi, while Susan made money by hawking tea in a hotel. Gilbert was described as a peaceful and supportive person who never got involved in disputes with anybody. He was too weak to harm anyone or even feed himself while in the hospital. Although his only brother has been reported to be a tout, Gilbert himself does not have any ties with gangs or criminal organizations that would require him to be silenced at all costs. Things got tougher for the family when Gilbert got sick in 2018 and had to be taken to the hospital for treatment. The family has been struggling to raise funds for the necessary hospital bills, often resorting to WhatsApp contributions to come up with the required funds. Gilbert was first taken to St. Mary's Hospital in Langata for treatment. However, after there were no improvements in his condition, he was discharged and then referred to the Kenyatta National Hospital on December 11, 2024. When he arrived at the Kenyatta National Hospital, he was admitted to Ward 7B, which specializes in the management of patients with nervous system disorders, also known as neurological conditions. The hospital clarified that Gilbert was not placed in a ward that was designated for mental health conditions, as reported by some news agencies. However, when asked during interview, Susan disclosed that the ward where Gilbert stayed had 7 other patients in it, and that one of them was perceived by many people to be mentally ill. Interestingly, this perceived mentally ill patient was said to be the main source of support for Gilbert whenever Susan was not around. According to her, the patient would assist Gilbert with basic tasks such as feeding and changing clothes, since he was too weak to do any of it himself. Upon his admission, it was discovered that Gilbert had some wounds on his body, which was due to his long stay on the bed without moving. A comprehensive evaluation was carried out on him, and it was found that he had a rare neurological disorder that makes the muscles of the body to become weak. The condition was said to be so severe that he couldn't use his legs and hands, therefore requiring total nursing care, including tube feeding. Despite the severity of his condition, his health status was said to have remained stable under their care. On the day before he was murdered, Gilbert's condition was observed to be stable, and the day also proceeded as normal. When the team scheduled for the night shift took over, they didn't notice any undue concerns. A nursing staff was said to have attended to him at 9 p.m., midnight, and also 3 a.m., and no abnormalities were reported during these routine checks. However, on Friday early morning, at approximately 6 a.m., during the nurses' ward rounds, Mr. Gilbert was found with his face covered by a blood-stained sheet. Upon uncovering him, the nurse discovered that he was motionless with a cut wound on his neck. The nurse immediately alerted her colleagues, security personnel, the attending doctor, and the hospital's management. The area was immediately cordoned off as a crime scene, and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations (DCI) was notified. The DCI got to the crime scene immediately and began their investigation. The investigators discovered that the ward where Gilbert stayed had another patient who was suffering from the same condition. However, when they tried to gather information from him, he was too weak to speak or even move. The detectives recovered a blood-stained kitchen knife that had been thrown onto the ground floor through the window near where Gilbert had been murdered. The CCTV cameras at the main hospital were not working that night, so the police attempted to reconstruct the crime scene using CCTV footage from the areas surrounding the ward. When the patients in the ward were interrogated, they all claimed that they didn't see the attacker. The detectives also interrogated patients in the neighboring wards, as well as the hospital's management and the family of the deceased. Unfortunately, they are yet to come up with any information that would lead to the arrest of the attacker. Susan was contacted after this horrific discovery was made. The hospital mobilized their team of psychologists and counselors to provide support to her after the sad news was broken. It would surprise you to know that this was not the first time a patient had been murdered inside the Kenyatta National Hospital. In November 2015, a patient named Cosmos Mutunga suffered a fate that was far worse than what happened to Gilbert. Cosmos was admitted to the hospital on November 8, 2015, but was found dead in the night with 42 stab wounds and other forms of brutality. He was with a deaf cancer patient at the time he was attacked. 3 nurses were also on duty on the night of the brutal murder. Just like with Gilbert, the only witness to the murder was a 12-year-old patient who could neither hear, speak, or write. The killers were later identified to be a man and a woman who were also in the hospital. However, there is no information that they were ever caught or prosecuted. Gilbert's death is tragic. The hospital has heightened security in its facility. They are also cooperating with the investigators to ensure that the attacker is caught and prosecuted. At the time this video was made, the motive for this horrible crime was yet to be ascertained. The patient, who was perceived to be mentally ill, remains a suspect in the case. However, when Susan tried to talk to him about what happened to her husband, she said she wasn't allowed to do so by the hospital staff. The case is still under active investigation, and I will publish an update when there is one. Meanwhile, who do you think is responsible for the attack? Is it the patients in the ward or an intruder from the community? You should know that the hospital management has denied the potential of an intruder coming into the hospital to commit the crime. They believe that the attacker is in the hospital. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more updates and more true crime stories. Thank you for watching and stay safe.